That's okay.
Welcome back to another Irish Health Hour chat. And today I'm delighted to talk to Dr. Jim Bradley, who's an author and a lot more than that. He's also an experienced scientist, educator, facilitator, and martial artist. You're very welcome.
Hello, Dolores. How are you doing? Thanks very much for having me on the program.
Not at all. I think it's a great, it's a great topic. It's wonderful. I love the whole journey. These kind of conversations make me excited because it's the type of the work I do myself. And I think your book is very much along the lines of exactly, really it's a guidebook for people. It's a self-help tool. So I'm going to let you do most of the talking on this.
That's okay.
In 2006, let's start there. What happened in 2016 that changed your life?
April the 5th, I went to bed. April the 6th, I woke up and my leg wasn't working. I thought I was asleep. I thought my leg was asleep. So I got out of bed and fell and then drove on to work. I was doing exams that day in the college. I teach in University of Limerick, and students come in to do the exam. First guy come in, I couldn't write his name. So my writing looked like someone who was 2 years old. I had no control of my arm as well. So like any person, any male person that is, I figured, sure, I'll give it a bit of a shake and it'll be grand. But unfortunately, a bit of a shake didn't make it grand. And struggled through the day, went on to see my GP, Tony Cox, and he diagnosed very quickly that I actually had a stroke during the night in my sleep. So it was into hospital and up to Galway Clinic, and through the whole process of being, assessed. And it was very quick. The guy who did the assessment really found it very, very fast. He said, yeah, you have had a stroke. It has been a minor one, but it doesn't seem to have been a TIA, because if it was a TIA, stuff would be coming back online, and my stuff wasn't coming back online.
And Jim, like up until that point, you had a very active life. You were leading a normal life. You were very busy work-wise, I guess. And
yeah. Busy with the family, busy with work, busy with the karate club. I was fairly fit. As a nurse in Galway Clinic said, I wasn't too fat either. So, I didn't feel that I was doing anything wrong as such. But unfortunately, the clot decided that it would intervene, and it set up residence in a part of my head that caused my leg and my arm not to work very well.
And do they know actually what causes a stroke? No.
Well, mine was caused by a clot, but the medics have no idea why it occurred or where it came from. It was just one of these things that kind of happened out of the blue. As I said, my father had a stroke when he was 60, but I lived a completely different type of lifestyle to Dad. I was much more active and all the rest. So I figured I was doing all the things to keep me safe from that particular eventuality. But you can't escape your genes, I suppose, in one way. And it just happened that on that night, something came to roost in my head, and that was the end of it,
And I love the way you describe it in your book. I'll show your book here, your Rise Up. The journey even that day of getting the diagnosis. And I just wanted to read out a small bit here, actually, if you don't mind, just something that struck me. I think that I love the way that you say it. I think from the start, your mindset was so good. You talk about, I'm a fairly proactive person. So the first decision I made was to move the stroke firmly into the past and concentrate on what was ahead. Now, that's phenomenal, really, to have the ability to do that, to have the mindset to do that, that you're living the experience. And there's so much story around this that you could have gone into, obviously, but you decided to, take us on the journey of how you decided to use the skills that you learned.
When I was in the hospital and the doctor made the diagnosis, my head's usually very, very busy. There's a lot of noise in my head, start thinking about things and doing things and all the rest. And I remember very clearly when he said what it was, there was absolute silence in my head. It was as if everything just got switched off. And it was in that silence that I figured, okay, this has happened. But the key word is, it has happened. It's not happening at the minute. And the only person who can really get me out of this is myself. So I kind of excused myself and went off to a room of my own. And I decided then I would say, okay, how bad is this thing? Because up until that point, I hadn't really sort of assimilated that it was a stroke at that time. So I went into a room, and as you said there, I'm a martial artist, so I have a 5th Dan black belt in Shotokan karate. And I decided, let's see how I can punch. And I couldn't punch. And then I said, okay, let's see how I can kick. And the night before training, I was able to quite easily kick to head height. And that day, I couldn't even get halfway up the skirting board. My kick was probably 3 centimeters off the ground, and my leg was just dragging along. So that's when I said, okay, this is not fun now. So I need to grab it, and I need to fix it, and as best as possible. And I think I was fairly realistic in that I realized it might not come back completely, but whatever level of normality I could get back to, that's what I was going to have to accept, the new normal. And basically, I made the decision there and then that, okay, I'm going to actually use what I know, use what I can do to try and get myself back to where I was.
That's fantastic.
As closely as possible to it,
What a great mindset, absolutely. And just sorry for interrupting you. The way they tell us that there are signs for stroke, but is this something really that didn't apply to you in the way that it came about, maybe during the night?
Yeah, it happened during my sleep, so I didn't see any. My speech wasn't slurred. My face wasn't down or anything. It was just that it had left a residual effect on my arm, my right arm, my right leg. The only kind of indicator I had when I got out of bed was that my leg didn't work and I fell.
Right.
I kind of stumbled when I got out of bed. But as I said, I kind of presumed that my leg was asleep and just battered on. I would have a tendency to keep going and try to move ahead.
So what was it about the years before 2016 that built up your mindset to be so positive? Or is there one single thing, or is it because of the work you do? You've dealt a lot with people throughout a lot of your work. So did that make you more confident, you think?
Well, I think, if you kind of look at it like a recipe, what I said, okay, what are the ingredients of me? I'm from the North, first of all, and growing up in the Troubles made you very resilient. It made you very careful. It made you very determined and very ambitious to kind of make yourself better and get out of that particular situation. I was a scientist, so I'm very logical. I'm a martial artist, so I'm very focused in terms of what I need to do, and I'm very aware of my body as well in terms of how it's feeling and all the rest of that stuff. And one of the key things was I love gathering knowledge, and I read quite widely. And one of the books I had read was by a guy called Dr. Norman Dodge, who wrote a book about how the brain has got plasticity, called The Brain That Heals Itself. And his premise was, if you do have some kind of an issue with regard to your brain function, that you should immediately start to try to use what has been maybe degraded or whatever. Because his thinking was, if you don't use the part of your body that's affected, effectively you're saying to your brain, well, you don't need that part anymore, so we'll not bother doing the reconnection. Whereas if you do try to use it, you actually establish new neural networks.
Very interesting.
And that was kind of what I had. So, from the second that I came out of that room, I was on a mission. And it started that night in the hospital. I was walking up and down the hospital ward. It looked a bit like Quasimodo, because I was very, very awkward in terms of how I was moving. But I was moving. And, I just kept going. And even the next morning, I walked down to the shop and in the bottom floor in the Galway Clinic, bought the Irish Times, went back up to try and do the crossword. And I can do the simplex in about 6 minutes. And that day it took me well over an hour because I knew the words, but I couldn't put the letters in the boxes. It looked like some child had just got it and went through it with a scribble. So I ended up buying a book of simplex puzzles, and basically that was my physiotherapy for fine motor skills to try and get my handwriting back.
That's phenomenal.
I tried to be as practical as possible, and being a northerner, there's a word we use at home. It's called being very thran, and if you're thran, it means that you're pig-headed, and you really try
Right.
and push yourself. So I suppose I would describe myself as being a thran man, and just basically grabbing what I have and making the best of it.
That's
And
phenomenal. I
humor,
mean,
humor is important as well.
yeah.
In the house, we would have a lot of black humor, and we decided we're not using the S word. So my wife called it my attention-seeking incident.
Love it.
And, we just kept it like that and tried to be looking forward. And even as you said there, the language that I used was very much putting it in the past.
Mm.
I refuse to use a word like survivor, because I think if you're using survivor, in a lot of cases you're kind of carrying it with you the whole time. I had a stroke. It was in the past. I was now moving ahead and was going to try and make as best a recovery as was possible for me.
And I love this because I love this. Usually people, now I'm not putting everyone in the same category, but if you have a scientific background, people can have a tendency, I suppose, some people to be just, very scientific and to not be as, you have it, I suppose maybe it's between the martial arts that brought you into the more focused body, the more, some people would talk about it being really listening and feeling into the body and knowing so much. And it's not necessarily like the physical body as such, but the emotional body, because you're talking about, even the effect of words, or this is the way I would take from it anyway. I mean, words are energy, and the way we speak has such an effect on us. So I love the way that your scientific background is just blending so well with all of the story.
Yeah, and I did use the science, to help me as well, because the whole thing about neuroscience and all the rest of that, I was trying to say, okay, how can I use this for my advantage? And that's what I tried to do. And even in the book, I tried to put in a wee bit of that as well. Not so much it would overwhelm people, but to sort of say, there is stuff out there that you can do, and you can't depend on the medics completely. I think for something like a stroke, a lot of it comes down to what are you doing yourself. And Dolores, I'd have to say, I was very lucky. It was only a minor stroke. It wasn't a big one. So part of that sort of gratitude for having such a minor entity was to give me kind of responsibility to get better,
yes,
to actually try my best to
absolutely
improve.
But you still did it, you know what I mean? Giving you credit for, yes, it was a minor stroke, but it was still a complete change in your life. I mean, it was a complete obviously, as you say, you started buying a more simplistic puzzle and everything, and that makes me think of the word acceptance that you speak about in your book as well. Realism versus acceptance, and to me it's like that you just, and as you said yourself, you accepted where you were. And I think sometimes we live in the past because, and this is now we do it unconsciously, obviously, and it's not given out to people saying that, but we can get caught in the past. But you have really, you have written this in your book. I think it's great, about optimal thinking and the acceptance of it, the ability to make a decision based on information that you have and where you are in the now. I just love it.
Yeah, and where you are now might not necessarily be where you wanted to be. Like,
exactly.
That April morning, I certainly did not want to be where I was.
Yeah.
But me not wanting to be where I was didn't change the fact that I was there.
Absolutely.
The only way you could move then was forward. And, it was my responsibility because I have a family, I have a wife, I have a job, I have lots of interests. Even that day, I was thinking about the people in my karate club who were getting ready for black belt. And I had 8 of them ready for the grading, including my daughter, Leanne, who's doing her second dan.
Oh.
And I promised them, I made the promise, I said, I'm going to be there on the day that. And sure enough, 8 weeks later, I was at the karate seminar and togged out and did as best I could and was there for my people. And
8 weeks later, wow.
And promises are much stronger than goals.
Promises are much stronger than goals.
Yes.
Wow, that's a great statement.
I think goals tend to be maybe a wee bit more external, but a promise is from your heart. It's from the inside, and it typically makes it much more personal. And I didn't really set goals. I just made loads of promises. And as I went through, I was ticking off saying, okay, that's that one covered, or that's, this next one's a bit harder, but I'll just keep on going. And a lot of support around me. My wife and Aoife and Leanne and Alana, my daughters, were fantastic. A lot of good friends as well were around me. But
that's great to hear. Yeah, and that takes me on to the next point I love to talk about in your book as well, and then I will talk about the 6 steps that you cover. But you said yes to life and to yourself and for your family. And one thing you talk about in this book, which is something that I'm so passionate about myself, that I'm actually writing a chapter in a book that's coming out in April about the very topic.
Okay.
Saying yes when you want to say yes, and saying no when no is what serves you better.
That's it. And I think when you do get a wake-up call like that, it really makes you evaluate what do you want, what serves you best. And some people might say, oh, that's very, very selfish. But when you find yourself in a situation where you've got a limited amount of, I suppose, energy and whatnot, you really want to apply it for getting the best result. And for me, the best result had to be for myself and also for my family. Everything else was kind of secondary or tertiary compared to that. And you were trying all the time to make decisions. And it wasn't you were being rude when you were saying no, but you were using no as a protective and saying, no, I'm not doing that. I don't, that's a waste.
Absolutely. And I think, I don't know what it is about, and it's not just a women's thing, obviously. It's embedded in our culture. I think that we really have this terrible habit, unconsciously at times, of saying yes when no is what we need, and putting ourselves under an awful lot of pressure. And you talk about it, it's our time as well, because where we put the energy we have is so important to our own physical, mental and emotional health.
Yeah, because we say yes to things we don't really want to do. We are carrying it with us and wondering, why did we say yes? And we should have said no. And there's all this mental energy being used up. You're doing the thing, which is whereas the person, if we had said no to them, 30 seconds later, they'd forgotten about it and they're going looking for somebody else to do it for them. Whereas when we say yes, we're carrying it for maybe a month, trying to get through it, instead of saying, sorry, no, I'm not doing that.
Absolutely. And saying no, as I often say too, is just saying no in a way that I have studied assertiveness as well. So I think that was my journey as well, is becoming more assertive. And when we say no in an assertive way, it's a loving way, and it's self-care for ourselves, and it's self-love, it's all these things. And as you say, if we're not fully stepped into our power, we may feel guilty then for saying no. But that's something that was part of my journey for sure.
Saying yes, Dolores, and I think that's a far worse feeling.
Say that again.
We can feel guilty for saying yes.
Yes.
I think that's far worse. That's far more wasteful.
Yeah, I love it all. As I say, I love your book. I'd highly recommend it. I love that you have got your own zone in it. So tell us about that. So it's kind of like a self-help as well, and where you give people actual almost homework, or as we say down here, oberbalia.
Yeah, I ask them questions, and instead of running about looking for a notebook or whatever, it's there in front of you. So there's a little space where you can scribble, you can revisit, you can go back and change stuff, instead of having to have the notebook or the laptop in front of you or whatever. So it was to make it handy, and I wanted to structure it in a way that would make the book useful. And it's funny, some people have said to me that they really like that part of the book, that it challenged them, as opposed to giving them information, it challenged them to use it more or less immediately. And you can tell something to a person, they might know it, but if you get them to do something with it, it really makes it much more sticky.
And definitely writing, I think, writing really gets the pistons in our brain moving as well. I think when we write, I know for myself anyway, it's like when journaling, even in the morning practice, whatever, we can just download so much. I mean, I wrote a 50,000 word novel in 3 weeks. Now I just let that flow. Where it came from, I always say I'll never know, but it's just when you put pen to paper. So I love that part of your book. I think that's when you really get the deep truths as well, when we realize what is holding our back and what our mindset is telling us. So this book is a 6-step guide for personal change.
Yes.
Do you want to give us an idea of the 6 steps, or have we covered? Yeah, you can give us a little rundown.
I'll run through them very quickly. The first one, I think whenever we're faced with a challenge and we need to change. In a lot of cases, we start looking for, okay, what do we need to do? What else do we need to try? What else do we have to bring in? In our lives today, we're so crowded, we're so overwhelmed that maybe the first thing we need to do is actually to look at what we can reduce. So what do we need to get rid of that or reduce down so we'll have the extra space or energy or time to do what we need to do. So the first step, the R, stands for reduce. It might be reducing what we eat. It might be reducing the amount of time we spend watching TV. It might be reducing the amount of things that we let annoy us. So it's very personal. It depends on everybody what they'll actually end up reducing.
Of course.
Then we move on to the next part, which is the I, and that's for increase. Are there things that we need to increase? So we need to increase the amount of exercise I'm taking. Do I need to increase my patience? Do I need to increase, what I'm actually learning or whatever? And when we look at it from the point of view of sort of this personal change, we need to increase what's going to add value and not increase maybe what other people are telling us because it worked for them.
Love it.
I think if you look at any, sort of internet systems that are there, you have people saying this is fantastic, you need to follow these 6 steps or whatever, and they prescribe it too much. My system, the sort of system that I've put out, the 6-step guide, it's not overly prescriptive, and the questions are all what's going to work for you, as opposed to this really worked for me. The focus is on the other person. Then there's stuff that we have to maybe start to do, stuff we've never done before. For some people that might be start saying no. It might be to start looking after yourself. It might be to start moving out of situations that cause you stress or strain or whatever. There will be other stuff then that you have to eliminate. And when I talk about elimination, it could be eliminating a habit that we have that maybe keeps us stuck from a health point of view. It could be eliminating a relationship that's maybe toxic. It could be eliminating, maybe stuff around the house in terms of the amount of clutter that's surrounding us. So you're trying to create space because we've already said we're going to increase stuff and start stuff. Something needs to give. So by reducing and eliminating, you're giving yourself space for that. The next 2 steps as well are also about creating space. The U of the up stands for unload. And in other words, is there stuff that you're doing that maybe somebody else could do, maybe even better than you? So why are you carrying it? So are there particular, maybe in work, are there duties that we can unload to other people? In the family, are there tasks or jobs that we could unload to other people? And are there things maybe in our realm of responsibility that we could unload, that maybe we don't have to be responsible for it? And again, that's about creating space. And I think, for personal change to actually be sticky, the creation of space is really important. Now, there will be some things then that we have to do, but we can't actually do them now. And it's kind of being what I'd call proactively procrastinating. So we decide, I have to do this, but I'm not doing it now. I'll do it at some stage in the future, and it's maybe captured in my diary or my mobile or whatever. And I'm going to park it, which is the P.
Oh my goodness. They're just phenomenal steps. I mean, you've covered so much there. I mean, I'm nodding my head here constantly because I'm thinking decluttering, I mean, it's wonderful. That's something I'm in the process of doing myself at the moment, and making way for the new to come in. It's a great book. I have to say, I'd highly recommend Dr. Jim Bradley's book. Where can people get it?
It's on Amazon in both the paperback format, and also it's on Kindle format as well for people who like to read on them.
Great.
So I think the key element in the book is never ever give up. I think it's very easy to listen to other people, and I think even if you look at the way that stroke was treated in the past, it was go to bed, don't move for 2 weeks, don't move for 3 weeks. It was very much the responsibility that was taken away from you to recover, and it was given to the medics or the nurses to look after you. That doesn't work. Okay, you need to be able to take responsibility for your own change and to be able to drive forward in as best a way as you can. And maybe using some of the steps would help you to reach the goals that you have to get to. I suppose I'd be fairly mindful as well that one of the things we see in society now is that sort of strive for the instant gratification.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's, streaming stuff off the internet, or, ordering stuff online, it's immediately on your computer. Change isn't instant. We need to have a resilience, we need to have a determination to keep driving forward for it. And to recognize, why am I making this change? What's in it for me, and what's in it maybe for my family? Why am I actually doing it? And then, as I said, I found myself that making promises was much stronger than setting goals, and trying to move ahead from that point of view, from a pure position of gratitude as well. I was delighted that I was actually able to do this, and I'm exceptionally lucky in terms of how it turned out.
Well, it's a very inspiring story. It really is. I mean, and it just shows the power of our mindset, and when we really just, have the ability to make small steps. And you're really, the 6-step guide that you're bringing people on, it's not rocket science. It's things that people can do, and that's what I love about it. And you have then your questions, which I would use as well in one of the other courses I have too, because I think when you ask someone a question, that can really, it can turn our mindset. It can open the lens in how we look at something, and it's a guided question is always great, rather than just, oh, that's a great book, but I don't know how to apply that to myself. So you're giving people a way to apply your 6 steps into their lives, and it doesn't have to be getting over a stroke, as you said.
Yeah, the feedback that I've had from people is that it has been really helpful. Like even Ray Darcy, when I was on his show, he said he loved the layout and the fact that it was so practical and so applicable to multiple situations. So,
and yeah, stressing that multiple situations. This is a book that you can use for any, relationships, your work, your personal life. It doesn't matter. It's an approach really to life, isn't it? Rise up.
Yeah, and it's, as I say, it's a guide. I'm not being prescriptive. It's what your change is your change, and that's you have to look at. And we have to make sure that we're not always striving to be totally perfect, because perfect is never going to happen. But can we be the best that we can actually be, with all the bits of us, all the ingredients of us that we have to work with and are trying to meld into a person and into a life? And that's the key thing, just to never ever give up, and always make sure you're using what you have to the best of your ability.
That's for sure. It's been a pleasure having you on. Delighted to have spoken to you about it. Great. Delighted to share your story. Delighted to share the book for you, and all the best for the future. And if you have any other book coming out, don't hesitate to give us a shout.
Okay, indeed. All right. Thanks, Dolores.
Thank you very much for being on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.